Good afternoon, Hatter Nation. It's very nice to be with you again for the presidential webinar. I asked with our back of the house folks what number webinar this was, and the estimate is either the 17th or 18th webinar we've done. And one of the things that's been so encouraging at the start of this semester is that, of course, we need to give you COVID-related information. We need to give you information about pressing challenges that we might be confronting as a community. But we're also getting the opportunity to celebrate and talk about things that are important to our community, most notably the kind of intellectual intimacy we try to provide here at Stetson University. As a presidential candidate, one of the things that really appealed to me about our university was, in fact, that deep commitment to intellectual intimacy that our faculty and students forge in their relationships in research that's done collaboratively, in action-based research, community-based learning, all those kinds of, again, I like to use the term intellectual intimacy, the things that we do to make sure that we can teach to both the mind, the body, and the soul. And today we're excited to be able to provide for our audience a really encouraging and exciting overview of some really impressive work in the grants area. It's a fairly wide lineup today, including some grant officers, some members of our faculty, and other areas of support. So I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. I will have a few announcements toward the tail end, but I'm delighted to share with you my incredible excitement about what's happening at Stetson with regard to research and grant writing. We're going to start out, if we could, today with Elizabeth Scomp, who is our Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and Professor of World Languages and Cultures, for those that are curious, with an expertise in Russian. And she'll be talking with us about current efforts and future opportunities and the impact that faculty research can have on our community. And also joining us and on the screen at the moment is Melinda Hall, Associate Professor of Philosophy and Department Chair. And she also is engaged as a faculty fellow in the Brown Center, really focusing in on faculty scholarship and publication. And so I'm delighted to have you both here. I'm sorry that we're not in person, but thanks for being here. So Elizabeth, I'd like to start with you. Can you set the stage for us? I know all of you, and two of you especially on the screen, have been working hard on some of the successes we've been talking about. But can you get us kicked off here and thinking about grant work and research work here at Stetson?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Thank you, President Rolke, and good afternoon to everyone. It's absolutely true that Stetson is in the process of elevating grant activity to a new level. And as you'll hear in the coming hour, part of that process includes aligning some of our internal resources as a springboard to encourage external grant seeking. And in fact, that interest in growing more fully a culture of grant seeking was one of the facets of Stetson that drew me to the university in the very first place. I also want to take a moment and note that Stetson, in fact, does have a significant past history of both successful individual faculty grant seekers and institutional awards through NSF, NIH, Arthur Vining Davis Foundations, the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund, and many others that have brought tremendous benefits to our students as well as advancing faculty scholarly agendas. But over the last 2 years, we've seen a significant increase in faculty grant seeking activity and in awards as well, thanks in part to the ongoing efforts of our grants office, a partnership with the firm McAllister & Quinn that provides grant writing support for a fixed number of both individual and institutional grant submissions annually. And of course, an important factor in all of this is the robust research, scholarly and community engaged activities of our faculty as well. Last academic year, so in 2019-2020, some of our notable successes included a major research instrumentation grant from the National Science Foundation. You may recall reading about that on Stetson Today with co-PIs, Professors Rosalind Crowder, Heather Evans Anderson, Holly Lynch, and Lynn Key, and a significant award from Arthur Vining Davis Foundations to the Institute for Water and Environmental Resilience and Executive Director Jason Evans. You'll be hearing, of course, more about one of our very recent successes, the NSF STEM grant, in just a few minutes. I also want to acknowledge, as President Rolke mentioned a moment ago, that a very important internal commitment of support for faculty research and grant-seeking efforts has emerged through the restructuring of the Brown Center for Faculty Innovation and Excellence and the appointment of Melinda Hall this fall to the newly created role of Faculty Fellow for Scholarship and Publication. I and many others are thrilled, of course, with all of the developments that I mentioned, and we're certainly looking forward to continued successes. I'd like to turn the mic over now to Melinda, if I may.
Thank you so much, Dean Scomp. Yes, I'm very excited to have joined the Brown Center on the topic of scholarship and publication. And in outlining my sort of action plan or scope of work when I took on the role, I articulated grantsmanship and grant work as one of my main pillars and one of my main areas of interest. And since that time, since the fall, I've been in a lot of communication with McAllister and Quinn, with the wonderful people at our grants office, including Sydney and Carol, and thinking about how to establish deeper springboards, as Elizabeth called them, to get to new funding, to get to new grants, and that includes thinking about bridge funding, seed funding, gap funding. Been in conversation across the university about what that can look like in different areas. Maybe it's shipping your sculptures or creative work to another location for, a small amount of money, but that opens up an opportunity. And that's something that the Brown Center would like to identify where those opportunities are and help faculty reach those new connections with folks out there who are supportive of the kind of work and research that they're doing. I'm also lucky enough to have been a part of several faculty teams in the fall. I feel that I spent all of my time in the fall talking about grants. I worked with several folks across the college on a concept paper for the Teagle Foundation that led to a new connection with Stanford University. Grants collaborations can lead to all kinds of new internal and external connections for us here at Stetson, regardless of the ultimate direction that grant takes and the ultimate funder that we match with. And so we have a new connection with Stanford around the concept of deliberative polling. And we have engagement with them in the opportunity to have events on campus through the political science department and with their support. And I'm just very excited about that. And so you'll see that I think our grants activity allows for these new directions. And sometimes we have that success and we get that fantastic grant, and other times we get a new connection out of the process. And so I'm very glad to be a part of all of this, and I'll definitely have more to say about some of those new developments.
Melinda and Dean Scomp, thank you so very much. Really appreciate your commentary. Melinda, I do have a quick question for you, if you don't mind. As I heard you speaking, I was thinking a little bit about the synergies that can take place between research grant activity and one's teaching, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think Stetson is particularly skilled in this area to provide some kind of, faculty are brilliant at this, creating synergy between their teaching and their research efforts. Would you mind speaking to that more broadly? You said that you've been working with a lot of faculty work groups throughout. Is that a theme that you're finding in your time with faculty, that they want to figure out ways in which they can create that marriage between their research and their teaching?
Oh, absolutely. So a couple years ago, Wendy Anderson reached out to me and several other folks who are working on climate change as a big problem across the humanities to think about new courses that we could build that united our areas of expertise. And we approached the NEH about this, and it led us to thinking, yeah, absolutely, about our curriculum, about new classes that are potential on the horizon for us. But it's not just sort of a matter of finding that interdisciplinarity. I think that faculty at Stetson are very excited to think through how funders could help us get to our goals. So a lot of people that I talk with would love to get the opportunity to co-teach more frequently, regardless of the topic. And so part of our approach with the Teagle Foundation was to think through how could we teach a course that marries communication and media studies with history, American history specifically, on the topic of citizenship. And so what I think I'm seeing among our faculty is that desire to take advantage of the overlaps of our research and to take advantage of the expertise on campus to build new courses. And so sometimes it's the occasion of a grant becoming available that allows us to think through some of those possibilities. And sometimes we're wanting to do something new and then we go seeking out that matching group that may be interested in funding that.
That's great. And Elizabeth, I know we're going to get into this a bit more when we get into the details of the NSF grant, but I was hoping I could ask you about not only the synergies that can take place between courses, interdisciplinary work, collaborations with faculty, and the way in which research grant activity and scholarship activity can improve our teaching. If you could speak a little bit from a dean's perspective about undergraduate research more broadly and how our students benefit from that, again, intellectually intimate experience that a grant opportunity often affords our students and faculty to work together.
Absolutely. So I feel that both now and in some of my earlier remarks, I'm kind of reiterating some of the points I stated 2 years ago when I was first engaging with the DeLand campus. I think many of us on this webinar realize how unusual it is that every one of our students in the College of Arts and Sciences has a senior research experience. And of course, we have that capstone experience that is common across the undergraduate curriculum at Stetson. But as Dean of Arts and Sciences, I'll speak to that in particular. And so the fact that that's a required component of our curriculum absolutely indicates how seriously we take that. And then, of course, the teacher-scholar model that we've adopted and that structures really our curricular work, our teaching, our scholarly and creative endeavors suggests to us at every level that those are mutually informing and, in fact, inseparable endeavors. So on practical levels, we can say that equipment that we acquire as the result of grant efforts, faculty research projects that offer student engagement, whether in support of those projects or able to branch out on their own. There are so many different ways in which that grant seeking, even the unfunded proposals, as Melinda has already mentioned, nonetheless enrich that culture of inquiry and learning that we absolutely want to support at every turn.
And I'd love to add one more item. I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's just something that I'm really passionate about. Our grant activity from the Community Education Project has increased the size of our undergraduate population as well. So the Community Education Project is our higher education in prison program at Stetson University. And we have been funded by the Hollis Center for Institutional Educational Reform as a seed fund initially, which was wonderful. And then we were able to parlay that into working with the Laughing Gull. And ultimately, we have an exciting announcement coming up soon for another grant that we just won. But that actually allowed us to increase the number of undergraduates at Stetson because now we have a cohort of incarcerated students. And so you see that directly impacting undergrads in that way as well.
Absolutely wonderful. And I just wanted to also echo something that Elizabeth said earlier, which is even in the process of writing a grant, even if you're not successful the first go around, that kind of discernment and that kind of prioritization of the things that you care deeply about as a scholar and as a teacher. Yes, we want to be successful, but even the process itself can be educative. So I just wanted to agree with that. And this community-based work is just so aligned with Stetson's values and missions. So thank you both very much. Let's invite our wonderful colleagues from the grants office onto the screen. Thank you. Let me introduce them to you. Carol Buckles is our Director of Grants, Sponsored Research and Strategic Initiatives. Carol is joined with us by Sydney Johnston, Assistant Director of Grants, also in Sponsored Research and Strategic Initiatives. Both of them have worked very carefully, not only with faculty and staff on grant writing, but also with our student body and with McAllister and Quinn, our consultants. And Sarah Kersey, who is Assistant Director of Sponsored Program Administration. So thank you for joining us. And first, you all deserve a round of applause for all of your work. Thank you so much for all you do to support our community. Can we start, Carol or Sydney, or both of you? I know you've been working with faculty on grants for some time, but what are some of the notable grants you've been wrestling with recently? And second question might be, and it's for any of you, what are the potential opportunities in the future that you see in the coming years?
Well, we're planning to start with what our grant office does and a little bit of how folks might get started with grants and then move into the awards we have, if that's all right.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. So just a little bit about what we do. So we have this wonderful team here that brings a lot of experience to Stetson and is devoted to helping our faculty and staff win grant funding. So our focus of our office is to increase the grant funding for Stetson for various projects and research. And that might be with government grants, federal, state, or local grants. It may be with foundation grants or corporate grants. And we work in all those areas. The way that our unit got started was 8 years ago, there was no grants office at Stetson. There was no administrative support for seeking grants. And at that time, there was $70,000 came into Stetson for grant funding that year. So the provost's office decided to create an office of grants and sponsored research. And Sydney and I started that grants office off. And this fiscal year, we have brought in, with all the faculty, wonderful, and staff support, $7.5 million in grants. So a fantastic increase and allowing faculty and staff to do amazing things for our students. That $7.5 million includes 2 CARES Act grants that we received, and those are to help with the COVID-related losses for the institution as well as students. And some colleges and universities did not get their full funding for that they should have, and others even lost their funding. So it's important to follow all the rules and regulations, and that's one of the things we do in our office. So that's a little bit about our history. As far as our goals, it is to find grant funding, to win grant awards, and then to successfully implement those awards. So Sydney, as our assistant director on the pre-award side, helps bring in the funds and helps search for grant funding. And Sarah on the post-award side ensures that we are compliant. We follow all the rules and regulations, and every single funder has their own very complex rules and regulations that you have to know, and provide support so faculty know where they are with spending down their funds and if they need no-cost extensions and any other kinds of things like that. So did want to make a note that if for any students who are listening, we are not an office of student grant funding. That would be the Student Financial Aid Office. We work with funding for faculty research and then the institutional grants that help either large groups on the campuses or the institution as a whole. So then I did want to direct you to, if you want to pursue a grant, the way to do that is to start with our either contacting Sydney or me or going to our website, and we're going to post that information for you of how to get to our website. That has several links of importance to you. One is the Grant Forward subscription that we have, and that is a grant search engine. And with that grant search engine, faculty, students, or staff can enter keywords, and then you will receive notification. You can set this up if you want a weekly notification, a monthly notification, however often you want to hear about grant opportunities that you might be able to pursue. And we have had some faculty very successfully use that, learn about new grant opportunities that we pursued, and were able to get that funding. So that's a fabulous resource. That's a link on the Grants Office website. The next step in the process is to fill out a first alert form, and that's another link on our website. That is made much easier. We have little check boxes now, and you just write a paragraph about the project that you want to do and about the budget that you plan to pursue, and that will help everyone know that you are pursuing this and that the university is behind it. So that's the process to get started, and then our pre-award team helps you get that grant submitted. And Sydney will be talking about that as he talks about the grants that we have been working on lately. And then last, we have the post-award. Once there is an award, then Sarah Kersey steps in and helps you with that part of the process. When you're doing the grant searching, as we had mentioned previously, we have the McAllister and Quinn Consulting Group working with us, which has helped us to have this huge increase in grant funding. They can help with finding grant funding that we aren't aware of because they're based in Washington, D.C. They have all kinds of connections, and they hear about things much sooner than we would. We might get a 30-day notice of a grant award. They'll have known months in advance it's coming, and it really helps if you have more notice to do a more competitive grant submission. So they also provide writing support. They have a team of 250 grant writers that have worked on the specific grants that we are trying to pursue. And that helps, again, helps us be more competitive. They can also do peer reviews and they can do edits. So that's kind of in a nutshell the process. We can line you up with McAllister and Quinn, as Melinda had talked about, to talk to them and get that kind of support. So that's our process. And then I wanted to turn it over to Sarah to tell you about some of the awarded grants that we have right now and how she's helping those grants be managed. Sarah?
Thank you, Carol. If we could pull up the slides of the active grants currently in post-award. So again, I'm Sarah Kersey. It's an honor to be here today. My primary function is that I serve as the business manager for each of our currently 29 active grants, over $8.3 million that we have going on right now. My primary goal is to establish excellent relationships with all of our faculty and PIs so that they know and that can trust that I'm here to help with anything they may need in post-award. And I'm also here to ensure grant compliance. Working directly with our incredible faculty is really my favorite part of this position. As you can see on the slide, the active grants list, the funder, the funded amount, and then the grant contact, principal investigator, project director, co-PI, etc. I just wanted to highlight a couple of these. I can't go over all of them. Obviously, we don't have that much time. The CARES Act, as Carol had mentioned, it's hugely important to follow the rules, which were difficult to determine. We were constantly getting new rules for this, but we did that beautifully, and we successfully awarded funding to students for COVID-19 related issues. The final report for this first portion of funding is due on the 8th of this month, but should be submitted by the end of the day today, I hope, if not tomorrow morning. So many people were involved in this grant, Jeff, Heidi, Patty Sanders, Rick. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for that. I also wanted to highlight the Sustainable Farming Fund. They've been able to distribute 29 grants to farmers in the Suwannee River Basin to help improve soil and water health while reducing environmental impact of the farms. Additionally, the fund was able to recently support the purchase of a vitally important conservation easement in Alachua County. The grant has been implemented with great success by Jason Evans, Kathy Day, and administrative help from Shelley Gentile. As it winds to a close on the 14th of this month, we're so hopeful that this fund's success will lead to many additional funding opportunities. I also wanted to highlight the Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women grant. This grant was awarded in September. They recently hired their project director, who is 2020 Stetson grad, Sarah Smith. The grant has 5 parts of their project. So they establish a community collaborative response team. They're partnering with Volusia Rape Crisis Center and DeLand Police Department. Enhance the mandatory prevention strategies for incoming students. Train campus law enforcement in the disciplinary process to respond effectively and appropriately to domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. To enhance universal prevention strategies and to provide comprehensive confidential victim services and advocacy through their partnerships with VRCC and DPD. And then lastly, as Melinda mentioned earlier, the community education project at Stetson. I just wanted to again highlight the CEP team and Pamela, and Andy Eisen. The grants coming in through CEP, the Alliance for Higher Education in Prison, and the Laughing Gull grants are truly incredible, and we're really hopeful to be able to resume safe in-person activities and classes at the prisons soon. And that is all I have to update.
Okay. And then next we wanted to turn it over to Sydney to tell us about some of the current projects that are in process, some that are pending that we're waiting to hear if they've been awarded, because it can take up to 9 to 12 months to hear sometimes if a grant has been awarded, and also about some that he's currently helping faculty and staff get out the door.
Yeah, Sydney, it's great to have you here with us. And just for the audience, Sydney's also an amazing local historian, and he's written an amazing first chapter on the history of 418 North Woodland Boulevard, which is where I happen to reside. And Sydney, thank you. And if I just interrupted for another second, also not only to mention that, but if there's anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question of any of our panelists or more generally, please just go ahead and throw that in the chat, and we'll try to get to your questions. Sydney, it's all yours.
Thank you, President Rolke. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm flattered to contribute to our community about the significance of our grant writing excellence across the institution, especially the innovation that our faculty bring to the grant writing process. So if we could bring up the first slide, please, Julie. I'd like to begin with our pending grants. Pending or presented grants are those that have been successfully submitted. You can submit a grant, but sometimes it can be returned without review. These are grants that landed, and they're being reviewed by the funders currently. And you'll see that we have just under $4 million of those grants, and they represent a broad cross-section of Stetson and some of our nation's and state leading funders. So we have the College of Law, the Hand Art Center, and the College of Arts and Sciences represented. And so it's a strong collection from the STEM through the humanities faculty member represented in this relatively brief but robust list that again amounts to around $4 million. So you can see by the code that we have 2 Florida Department of State grants out of 2 different divisions: Cultural Affairs for a grant expertly written by Director James Pearson, and then a $500,000 grant equally expertly executed by CFO Bob Huth, Dean Alexandre at the law school, AVP Patty Johnson, also the law school, and then of course our very own Benita Dukes. That's truly a team effort on the staff and the leadership side to get that monumental grant out the door. Just as significantly, we have an excellent team of faculty members who came together under the leadership of Dean Scomp to form a team to prepare a Teagle Foundation concept paper for improving civics education on campus and in the community. And of course, those 3 faculty members, as indicated here, are Doctors Hall, Hill, and Croce, and a tip of the hat to an excellent, beautiful concept paper that I think has compelling future prospects here at Stetson. There's also pending an NSF IU's grant that's improving undergraduate STEM education. And of course, many of our federal funders like NSF, the National Science Foundation, love using acronyms. And of course, I tend to use just the acronyms. And so if anyone has questions about any of these, I'm glad to unravel what those acronyms mean. And so that's Dr. Lynn Key, who has been through 1 round of review, and there's a promising future, I think, for that grant. It's a very exciting time, and we should hear very soon. The National Institutes of Health include a RO1, which is the largest of all the National Institutes of Health awards and solicitations, with our very own Dr. Robert Askew with a sub-award at the Ohio State University. So that's an important, really a vital link showing the collaboration possibilities between R1s and predominantly undergraduate institutions like Stetson. Again, a very exciting time. And then a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, a Human Resources and Services Administration grant through the Behavior and Health Workforce Education Training Program. That's a $1 million grant submitted last month by Dr. Paige Thanasu, a brilliant grant developed in partnership with M&Q. The M&Q, the McAllister and Quinn are grant writing experts who also bring expertise in the political arena about what's available and what's coming down the pike in the way of grants is really unparalleled. The John Templeton Foundation request of $1.7 million by Dr. Jesse Fox is among the most brilliant of the recent grants, in that it's a collaborative proposal with 3 other collegiate institutions that focus on religious and spiritual competence and mental health counseling. And we're anxious to see about how the Templeton Foundation responds to that monumental request. The Spencer Foundation is a relatively modest but important foundation that Dr. Rosny Akini is a 3-member team on for a sub-award with the University of Florida. And they're doing really excellent work in North Florida on data collection, analysis, and dissemination of English learners in rural Florida. And we should learn pretty soon about the outcome of the Spencer Foundation. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And I know I've left a few of these off. We could come back to those if we have time. This shows the in-process pre-award planned grants, and that's our window, really our horizon to the end of the FY. And so we organize our spreadsheets by fiscal years to help us account for all of the activities with our innovative faculty, as well as those grants that are coming up for next year. So we have another set of spreadsheets for next FY that are already being developed. And so here you'll see an even larger collection of planned grants at a little bit over $4 million. Let me focus on just one of those for right now, because I know time is short and there's probably a number of questions that have sprung out of what I've already said. You'll see at the second entry, the SAMHSA, and that is Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. That grant is due tomorrow by 11:59 p.m. And so what I found along the way, with the assistance again of M&Q, and you will see it's a purple highlight or a lavender highlight, M&Q, McAllister and Quinn, provided expert support, found a top rank talented grant writer at another institution to literally write the grant with our team that was excellently assembled by Dr. Lee Baker and Dr. Jesse Fox. And so we're very excited about that possibility. And as soon as my part of the presentation is over, I'm back to grants.gov to help get that grant in. One of the discoveries that we made in the 83-page solicitation associated with this grant is the statement that, and I'll quote, project narratives can be more than 10 pages. The key word left out of that by the writers and editors of that solicitation was no. So they missed the no, and it should have read no more than 10 pages. And so that's part of the expertise that we bring to the table to help vet and perfect the interpretation of guidelines that are almost endless for some of these solicitations. And I can't speak highly enough about Dr. Baker in the Department of Student Counseling Services and the expertise that she brings to the process, as well as Dr. Jesse Fox in our Counselor Education Department. Now you'll see that we have, and that's a $290,000 proposal. And it has a cost share of 1-to-1, and cost share opens up a whole nother conversation that I will forego at this point because it's fraught with many challenges. And indeed, that was a very challenging part of this project that I'm glad is coming to an end, and I'm looking forward to a successful submission and all the best for full funding to that team of project directors. And so I'd like next to turn to a different a different part of the conversation, because I know we're probably a little short on time. The faculty members that I support come from law, College of Arts and Sciences, business, and music. And so our office affords opportunity for all of our faculty, all of our leadership to work with us on grants that either are very small. I think you saw one on a previous slide, and you can pull that slide down, Julie, thanks, of $400 all the way through large 7-figure grants that are in many ways almost monumental for Stetson. And I'd like to credit Dr. Jason Evans with his expertise in community engagement and what I've learned from President Rolke about organic collaborations in working with regional planning councils and local county governments and municipal governments on various Sea Grant projects. And Jason and I will be presenting in about 10 days at Kerr Dialogues remotely about optimizing relationships between sponsored programs, offices, and faculty researchers. And so Dr. Evans brings this vital voice into that national undergraduate conference for faculty to relate to sponsored programs offices better. He's an expert in that, especially with the early career faculty who may find that their campus cultures are difficult to navigate. And so in our co-presentation, I've learned to deeply value the voice that he brings, both in terms of relationship building as well as his expertise in developing grants. And Jason collaborates very closely with Carol, Rick, Sarah, and me while helping to build a national standard for collaborations, undergraduate research, and grantsmanship. Now, very quickly, some of the typical pre-award support mechanisms that we offer are researching funding opportunities, interpreting funder solicitations and webinars, contacting foundation staff or federal program officers for clarification on a multitude of sometimes very confusing solicitation statements, help faculty build budgets either from scratch or using the funder's prescribed templates. And one of my favorite phrases is to help demystify faculty effort using worksheets that show how an academic year or a summer effort is really parsed in very specific ways that are easy to interpret with this simple worksheet. I also help compose, advise, distribute both internal and external letters of intent to collaborate, letters of commitment for various types of private foundation and federal grants. Our office helps research and compose sections of NSF facilities, equipment, and other resources documents, and NIH facilities, resources, and equipment documents. Some of that information can be challenging to get to through the various offices on campus. And so what we like to do in our office is help bring all those parties together to communicate clearly about grants. One of the things that, one of the items that we completed recently is the supervision of an NSF fiscal review. And that key support mechanism from finance and by the finance office and their staff, and then through Rick Tyser, Carol Buckles, and Sarah Kersey, brought the close of that fiscal review in a timely fashion with everything accepted the first time by the federal agency, which I think is a pretty remarkable achievement. We also offer editorial services for project descriptions and all the various parts and pieces, because Carol and I are both published in peer-reviewed journals, and I work on a volunteer basis in Cura Magazine. That's the National Council of Undergraduate Research Administrators. And so most folks outside of sponsored programs have no idea that there's a professionalization movement for folks in our position that use publications and scholarship to advance the culture of grants on all of the nation's campuses. In addition to Incura magazine, there's also the Journal for Research Administration by the Society for Research Administrators International. And so this is part of a pre-award segment as well, offering those editorial services.
Sydney,
And so the value added proposition means that our faculty innovators, as our STEM team represents, is at really the lead of what we try to do in our office. So please.
Sydney, absolutely outstanding. I want to thank you and also Carol and Sarah for all of your good work. Really amazing. And we do need to get on to our NSF group, which is also very exciting. You just mentioned it. And I also appreciate so much how the grants office is attentive to notions of interdisciplinarity, to collaboration, and use the word organic collaboration. That's wonderful, beautiful stuff. Can I ask the NSF colleagues, the NSF team, to get on the screen? And Melinda Hall has to depart for another reason. I want to thank her for her efforts, but now we have to introduce to you a number of wonderful colleagues. We've got Tandy Grubbs, who's a professor of chemistry and principal investigator. Holly Lynch, assistant professor of physics and a co-principal investigator. Lynn Key, assistant professor of biology and a co-principal investigator. And Will Miles, associate professor of mathematics and computer sciences, also a co-principal investigator. And I think you have extraordinary news to share with us.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the invitation to join you and tell you about this exciting news. And I want to add that there's one other co-PI, Ben Tanner, who he had a prior commitment at 4:30. So we'll try to represent and speak well for him. I guess to tell you a little bit about this grant program, it's a National Science Foundation program that is dedicated to offering scholarship support to students, particularly low-income students and underrepresented students from underrepresented backgrounds. And through work with the grants office, and Sydney Johnson in particular was kind of worked very closely with us and the co-PIs in the preparation of this grant. And it's a 5-year commitment, a lot of money, and it's going to benefit our students really in sort of 3 ways. Foremost, we're going to bring in a cohort of 16 students, both in fall 2021 and in fall 2022. Those students will get up to $10,000 scholarship support added to their Stetson scholarship package per year. And again, those funds are for low income, and we are making efforts to identify students from underrepresented backgrounds, which this program is really focused on. The other way we're going to help these students succeed is we're going to engage them in a special curriculum, a general ed curriculum that is STEM themed in an interdisciplinary way. And so we're focusing on students from several STEM disciplines, biochemistry, chemistry, computer science, environmental science, molecular biology, mathematics, and physics. And the idea is bring these students together, and we're actually going to keep them together as a cohort in their gen ed courses for 3 years. And we're going to kind of pursue some themes that we think are really important. In today's world, if you want to be a successful scientist, you can't just be a chemist, or you can't just be a mathematician. You can't be an expert with computer coding. You need to be able to combine those skills and work with other people in teams to really make accomplishments. And so the gen ed courses are going to be designed to really help build those skills and promote them. And very hands-on, project-based types of learning, lots of high impact practices, and get their hands on things and get them exciting, because we all know that the very best learning happens when it's curiosity driven. And so we'll have scholarship support, the special curriculum, which we hope is going to really assist us in terms of retaining students, getting them through to graduation. And then since we've been talking about research, faculty research and undergraduate research, this scholarship will also provide each of those students with $1,000 that they can use toward their junior, senior year in support of their capstone research experiences. This would be $1,000 in addition to resources that they would have already been able to take advantage of at Stetson. And so that's the project, and maybe I'll turn it over to some of the other PIs to talk about maybe some of the courses that we have planned for this this alternative gen ed curriculum. Does anybody want to, Lynn, you want to volunteer?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Key. I'm a professor in the biology department, and I'll probably be developing a class for the students in their sophomore or their junior year that will be using molecular biology and biotechnology, probably incorporating modern and innovative technology, for example, using CRISPR gene technology, or even biotechnology or mechanisms used to diagnose COVID. So bring that into the classroom. So bring in the biology of SARS-CoV-2 virus and the pandemic into the classroom to get them excited about science and bring those skills to the forefront. So I'm really excited about developing that and working with the team on developing our student learning outcomes and just getting the students really excited and in the classroom.
Holly, do you want to add anything?
One of the other things that we've talked about as we've thought about kind of how to incorporate writing and kind of a focus on science writing with this cohort. So it's kind of interesting we've been talking about kind of the grants and thinking about getting students to have the opportunity to read the kind of literature that we read when we put together proposals, and potentially even as a course activity have them write a fellowship grant like you would write for being a graduate student, and using kind of those skills and developing those as part of one of those sophomore junior courses.
Will.
Yeah, I'm always impressed when I listen to my colleagues talk. Just listening to you, I'm already getting more ideas. When Lynn was talking, I sit there and go, yeah, and if you put a mathematical model of the spread of COVID, then you can understand how the parameters of that need to be at certain levels in order to tamp this thing out. So you see the type of interdisciplinarity that can happen and the collaboration that can foster itself. But the other thing Tandy mentioned, that high impact practices and curiosity being necessary for great learning. The other thing that needs to happen for great learning in my mind is a sense of comfort and a sense of community. And by bringing these students in as a cohort and providing that instant engagement and that instant community for them, I hope it makes it even easier for them to be successful as they go through their time here at Stetson. So I think it'll be really exciting for the students and for the faculty, and then hopefully that kind of just spreads out into the population in general.
This is wonderful. If you see me smiling on the screen, it's because you're hitting so many, for me as an educator, so many of the right notes, right? The whole notion that you're not going to solve the world's most pressing problems within a single discipline. The notion that some of the most potent learning actually happens when you can apply what it is you're learning in the classroom in real world settings. You, Will, just mentioned the whole notion of how this grant and other efforts on campus can help build community. right? And help people have a comfort level on the Stetson University campus. I mean, so if you see me smiling, it's because I see not only a great spirit of collaboration, but as an educator, you're hitting all the right notes, it seems to me, in terms of what the most potent forms of education entail. It does, in fact, promote intellectual intimacy between faculty and students. And again, it's just wonderful. So I congratulate you really from the bottom of my heart for all this work. It's really great. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, which I'm hoping anybody on the screen might be able to answer. Elizabeth, you can as well. Is if I'm a member of the community and I'm either hearing about this through Stetson Today or I'm hearing about it through this webinar, are there opportunities for those that have not yet been engaged in the work to be supportive in some way or to be engaged in some way? I know you're just rolling this out and you've got co-PIs and you've got PIs and lots of people engaged, but I thought it's a legitimate question. How can members of our community stay tuned on this progress of this work?
Let me just make a very quick comment in response, which is absolutely relevant to the STEM grant that we've just been discussing. So we benefited tremendously from the commitment of expertise from one of our former members of our College of Arts and Sciences Advisory Board and one of our current members who respectively have some experience with federal agencies. And so more broadly, I think that we're going to see continued opportunities for engagement across the board, particularly those grant opportunities that have community engagement and an impact built into them.
Wonderful.
President Roque, I will say that we found out about this grant award in November, and I think you were maybe hinting at this, that we had to hit the ground running if we were going to recruit these students for the fall. And so we are actively working with Raynault and the rest of the admissions team and making sure that the students who are interested in STEM know about this opportunity and building this cohort. And if there's any students or parents out there listening and you think you're interested in this, I'll type I don't know if they can read, but I'll send me a message. We will get you plugged in and answer all your questions.
That's great. That's great. Another question, which may not be for this panel, but maybe Elizabeth, you could be helpful about, which is when you get into the grant writing piece and we think about, the intellectual intimacy that we started this whole session with, are there grant opportunities out there if a faculty member or another member of our community wants to engage research assistants in some way that are students? We're not a doctoral granting institution, right? We are primarily an undergraduate institution with a College of Law and certainly with some selected master's programs. But those are research opportunities for students, either in the form of research assistantship or a teaching assistantship, can be quite powerful. I'm wondering if you might speak to that a little bit as successful grant recipients and also those that pursue grants.
I think Lynn would be especially well positioned to talk about this in a moment. I would note very quickly that it really depends on the grant, whether this kind of student research assistantship is allowable. And it's unfortunate that Melinda Hall, as one of the CEP leaders, is not here to share the experience from that grant, but perhaps Lynn, you would be willing to speak to that with your own proposals.
Sure. So I submitted an NSF grant, and the grant is pending under review at the National Science Foundation. And I wrote into my grant some undergraduate research assistants to help me with my scholarly and teaching and research work. And so you can, in grant writing, write into a budget so I can pay my students. But currently, as is, I do, for some of my classes, have teaching assistants. So TAs. So, when I teach genetics or molecular biology, I usually ask one or two students to be my TA who they will help me with lab work and lab prep, which all these classes have a lab component to it. And those TAs have been amazing. I've had many over the course of the last few years, and they've gone on to do great things. So, if you are a student and you want to be a TA, you can ask your professor. If you really engaged in a class and had a really good relationship with your professor, please talk to us. We would love to have you as a TA. And we do have a wonderful program in the natural science division called the Student Peer Instructor Program, the SPI program. And so these are students who help, in the introductory curriculum. So biology and chemistry, and I believe physics too. We do have SPIs. Physics, Holly? No SPIs? Okay.
We have
So,
tutors, but no
tutors,
spies.
okay. So, but yes, a lot of our introductory biology classes have SPIs, and these SPIs have been great.
Well, I want to thank you all. Regretfully, we're running out of time, but again, my sincere congratulations to each of you for this extraordinary work. It's not only so important for your work, it's also so important for Stetson and for the education we afford our students. I'd be remiss too if I didn't mention how incredibly timely this is, given our upcoming investments in our physical plant with the CC and Hyatt Hall for Health and Innovation, which again focuses on many of the themes that you just described of interdisciplinarity, hands-on learning, trying to deal with some of the most pressing problems in our communities. So thank you again for your extraordinary work. And please don't hesitate to shout if there's anything I can do in my capacity as your new president to be helpful in promoting your work. So thank you. Really appreciate it. I have two more things. I said two before. I still have two. One is I'd be remiss if I did not emphasize again that we are still in the middle of a pandemic and we still must do our WWW. There are new variants out there and vaccines are rolling out, but we're a little lower on the totem pole, so to speak, in terms of priority. So please do wear a mask. Please do wash your hands regularly. Please do watch your distance and please do watch your crowd size. I'm delighted that we are in tier 2 and we'd like to be able to maintain that tier 2 status where we can interact face to face on a more regular basis. So just a friendly reminder there. It is Black History Month, and we have a number of upcoming events that are critical to our community and our well-being. I'd like to go here, Values Day in 2021. I think it's an interesting play on words, given what we've been through in 2020. Values Day will be Hindsight 2020. Great opportunity to reflect on where we've been and where we're headed. We'll have a webinar on February 11th, next Thursday, again, discussing issues around 2020 and what we've learned from that, and also what we have also learned about racial injustice in the past and how we can move forward from those lessons. Caribbean Student Association Valentine's Day Roses and Chocolate fundraiser. Stay tuned for that. They need our support, and what a wonderful way to spread the love. And Black Student Association events put together a really, really powerful set of opportunities for community engagement. We've got movie nights in collaboration with Hillel, a BSA game night. We've got a trap karaoke, hip hop style Zumba at the Hollis Center, and of course, Black History Month, the Harlem Renaissance on the Green. So please stay tuned for those events. And our second annual Black History Month celebration, 1619 Fest Orlando, coming up again just prior to Valentine's Day. Please take a look at Eventbrite page for more information about that opportunity. And Breaking Bad Poetry's 2021 Women of the World Poetry Slam Festival, Saturday, February 20th in the afternoon from 1 to 5. Black Girls Run virtual run and bike ride. Important to stay healthy, particularly during a time of a global pandemic. Nice, safe opportunity here to get out there and run and bike. Saturday, March 20th and Sunday, March 21st. And again, for more information about these and other activities, please do reach out to Amanda Castori of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I want to thank each and every one of you, including our faculty members, our grant writers, our grant support team, our dean. I want to thank all of you for engaging with us on these very important investments that Stetson University is making with regard to promoting intellectual intimacy. Please stay safe, stay well, and stay tuned. Good afternoon.